It's one thing to try to establish a correlation. You're showing that, hey, look, if this person gets a higher LSAT score, that suggests that they're more likely to get a higher bar passage rate. If you can see that sort of trend, then you've shown that there is or might be or is, in fact, a correlation between those two things. And what a lot of people do is as soon as they see a correlation between two things, they immediately assume that one of them must cause the other, right? Like if people who smoke are more likely to get lung cancer, that's a correlation. That's saying, hey, these two things happen together. We see these two events, smoking and lung cancer, happening to the same people. So you say, okay, I know what's going on here. Smoking is causing lung cancer. And while the correlation is evidence for that, it suggests that might be happening. The problem on the LSAT is that these arguments always go too far and they say, hey, therefore smoking does cause cancer. I heard this on, I think the Freakonomics podcast. I don't know if it's true, but I think what they were saying is that you can never prove causation, or that we almost never prove causation in science. That seems like a pretty bold claim, but I think if that's what they were saying, you almost never prove it, but you make it really, really close, right? You've controlled for 15 potential variables that could explain why these things are happening together, and you show that this is the only variable that is correlated with that other outcome, then that's pretty damn strong evidence that that is the causal factor. But I think what they were trying to say on that podcast, and I'm sympathetic to this claim, that it's still at the end of the day, studies can't, unless you can like get into the physical matter of like what's affecting something else. All you're really doing in most studies is studying correlations. For the purposes of the LSAT, what happens so frequently is the LSAT establishes some sort of correlation between two things and then immediately jumps to the natural, stupid, everyday conclusion that this one thing must have caused the other. And what I wanted to clarify to the class was, hey, look, that is evidence for it. Like we can now start to think maybe that is a causal relationship. Maybe A does cause B, but it's just not proof. And when the conclusion is this does happen, or this does cause this, A does cause B, that's when you need to put the brakes on and say, well, not necessarily. Maybe B causes A, or maybe something else causes both of them, or maybe the study itself was flawed and the correlation doesn't even exist. We just think it does. It's like, yeah, it's some evidence. There's some inkling here. There's some clue that maybe A does in fact cause B. It's just that's not the standard. The standard is, does it have to be true? And if it doesn't have to be true, then the argument's flawed. And that changes too the focus, right? So like if the LSAT says, look, people who smoke are more likely to get cancer. Well, okay, correlation, boom. And then the conclusion says, therefore, smoking might cause cancer. I'm not having any problems with that correlation to causation argument, right? I'm like, yeah, it might. So where else is the flaw, right? But other people might just be so sucked into, I know the correlation causation flaw. I know that's probably being tested here. So that's what's wrong. It's like, no, you need to listen to the conclusion. And there, the conclusion didn't fuck up. Yeah, it very well might be the case.